The eye in the wall. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was just a nail hole. A tiny imperfection in the beige drywall of my apartment, no bigger than the tip of a pen. I ran my finger over it, feeling the slight indentation. Maybe I hadn't noticed it before. Maybe it had always been there. But as I stepped back, something about it gnawed at me. It was too perfectly round. Too deliberate. I leaned in, squinting, pressing my eye to the hole, and that's when I saw it. An eye. Not my reflection, not a trick of the light, an actual, bloodshot human eye staring back at me from the darkness beyond the wall. The iris was a murky brown, the sclera veined with red, the pupil slightly dilated. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to move, to run, to do anything but keep looking. But I couldn't. Because the eye wasn't just looking. It was watching. Studying me. I yanked back, stumbling into the coffee table. The lamp wobbled, casting frantic shadows across the walls. My pulse slammed against my ribs as I stared at the hole. The eye was gone. Only black emptiness remained. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was just my own reflection distorted by the angle. But my gut told me otherwise. I grabbed a piece of duct tape from the junk drawer and slapped it over the hole. My hands were trembling. I didn't care if it looked stupid. I just needed to cover it. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the old pipes sent a fresh wave of paranoia through me. I kept picturing that eye, unblinking, waiting behind the wall. By morning, I convinced myself I had overreacted. Stress, exhaustion, and overactive imagination, I could explain it all away. Until I saw the hole again. It wasn't where I had taped it. The duct tape was still in place. But now, across the room, near the bedroom door, was another hole. Identical in size. Identical in shape. My stomach twisted. My skin went cold. I forced myself forward, slowly, as if approaching a wild animal. My fingers hovered over the hole. The air around it felt unnaturally cool. I leaned in. The eye was there. Closer this time. Unblinking. I jerked back, my breath coming in short gasps. This wasn't my imagination. This wasn't normal. Someone, something, was watching me. I grabbed more tape, covering the new hole. Then I searched the entire apartment. Every wall. Every corner. Every goddamn inch. I found nothing. But that night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still watching. That it was waiting. I should have left then. But I didn't. And I wish to God I had. The next morning, I woke up to a strange sensation, like the air in my apartment had changed overnight. It smelled different, stale, almost damp, like old wood left in the rain. The moment I sat up, my eyes went straight to the walls. I scanned them like a paranoid lunatic, my heartbeat already accelerating before I even saw it. Another hole. This time, it was on the ceiling, right above my bed. My body stiffened, a slow, creeping horror washing over me. The hole was so small, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, but I was looking. I was always looking now. I didn't want to check, but I had to. I swung my legs off the bed, took a deep breath, and dragged a chair over. The wood creaked under my weight as I stepped up, tilting my head back until the hole was directly above me. My throat felt tight, my mouth dry as sandpaper. My mind screamed at me not to do it, but my body disobeyed. I looked inside. The eye was still there. Only this time, it wasn't staring passively. It widened the second I appeared, the pupil shrinking, the sclera twitching like it was adjusting to the light. It was alert. Aware. Focused. It was expecting me. I nearly fell off the chair, my arms flailing as I stumbled backward. My skin felt wrong, like it didn't belong to me anymore, like something else had taken hold of it. The urge to claw it off, to rip it away, was overwhelming. I rushed to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, gripping the sink so hard my knuckles went white. My reflection looked back at me, pale, gaunt, eyes sunken with exhaustion. I needed to leave. This wasn't some harmless peeping Tom. This wasn't some freak coincidence. Something was here, inside these walls, inside my space. Watching. But where the hell would I go? It wasn't like I could just pack up and move overnight. My lease wasn't up for another 6 months, and I could barely afford this place as it was. Besides, what would I even tell people? Hey, I think there's an eyeball living inside my drywall? Yeah, that would go over great. So instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed a tube of caulk from under the sink and sealed the hole shut. Then I went around the entire apartment, checking every inch of every wall, every ceiling, every goddamn surface. I sealed every crack, every imperfection, every place a new hole could possibly appear. And for the first time in days, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, it was over. That night, I slept with the lights on. The silence pressed down on me, thick and suffocating, but I told myself it was fine. No new holes. No more eyes. Until I woke up to the sound of whispering. It was so faint, so soft, like breath against my ear. At first, I thought I was dreaming, my mind twisting in half-sleep delirium. But then the voice came again, low, rasping, impossibly close. I like the way you sleep. The blood in my veins turned to ice. Every hair on my body stood on end. My lungs locked up, my brain refusing to process the words. The whisper was real. It wasn't in my head. And it wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from the pillow beside me. I didn't move. Couldn't move. My body felt like it had been dipped in concrete, my breath locked in my throat, my limbs numb and useless. The voice had come from right next to me, from the empty side of the bed where no one should have been. I could feel the weight of the silence pressing against my ears, the slow, heavy thudding of my heartbeat rattling my ribs. I needed to turn my head. Needed to look. But every fiber of my being screamed against it. My mind was caught in a vicious loop. What if I looked and saw nothing? Worse, what if I looked and saw something? The air felt thick, wrong, like I was inhaling something that wasn't meant for human lungs. Slowly, ever so slowly, I forced my head to tilt just enough to see the pillow beside me. It was empty. No imprint, no sign of anyone ever having been there. But the whisper had been real. My skin crawled, a sickening nausea twisting in my gut. I sat up so fast my head spun, my body tangled in the sheets as I kicked myself free. I fumbled for the lamp, my fingers shaking so badly I could barely grip the switch. Light flooded the room, harsh and sterile, chasing away the shadows. Nothing. I was alone. But I knew, in the deepest, most primal part of me, that I wasn't. The whisper had been right beside me. Right. Beside me. I staggered to my feet, my entire body trembling. The walls. The goddamn walls. My eyes darted across them, scanning every inch, expecting, no, dreading, what I would find. And then I saw it. A hole. Right above the headboard. The caulk had been pushed out from the inside, a thin, jagged crack surrounding the opening like something had forced its way through. My stomach lurched, bile rising in my throat. I wasn't just watching anymore. It was getting closer. I grabbed my phone, hand slick with sweat as I pulled up my landlord's number. It rang twice, before going to voicemail. I barely let the beep finish before I started speaking, my voice raw, frantic. I need someone to come check the walls in my unit. I don't care what it costs. I don't care if it's the middle of the night. There's something inside the walls, something alive, and I need it gone. I hung up before he could call me crazy. Before I could hear my own words and realize how insane I sounded. The rest of the night, I sat in the corner of my room, back pressed against the cold drywall, every light in the apartment on. I didn't sleep. Didn't even blink for longer than a second. Every sound made my skin jump, every creak, every distant murmur of pipes settling. I was a raw nerve, exposed and fraying, waiting for the next whisper, the next hole. Morning came slow, dragging itself through the hours like a dying thing. As soon as the sun crept through the blinds, I threw on some clothes and left. I didn't even bother packing a bag. I just needed to get out, to breathe air that wasn't tainted by whatever the hell was inside those walls. I walked aimlessly for hours, my brain a static haze of exhaustion and paranoia. The streets felt unreal, too bright, too loud, too filled with people who didn't know that I was being watched. That I was being followed. Because that's what it felt like. Even outside, even in the open air, I couldn't shake the feeling of something pressing against my back, of something just beyond my vision, waiting. I checked into a cheap motel on the other side of town, paid for a week in cash, and locked myself inside. It wasn't a solution, but it was distance. And for now, that was enough. At least, it should have been. But that night, as I lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the popcorn ceiling, I saw it. A tiny hole. Right above me. My entire body went rigid. The motel room was supposed to be safe. The walls here weren't mine. This wasn't my apartment, wasn't the place where that thing had first made itself known. But the hole was there. And I knew, without even needing to move closer, that something was watching me from inside. My breathing shallowed, my pulse hammering in my skull. I should have run. Should have grabbed my keys and bolted. But I didn't. Instead, I did something far worse. I reached for my phone, turned on the flashlight, and slowly, so goddamn slowly, pointed the beam toward the hole. At first, I saw nothing. Just darkness. Then, movement. A slow, almost lazy blink. The eye was still there. My phone slipped from my grip, landing on the mattress with a dull thud, the flashlight casting long, distorted shadows across the ceiling. I wanted to scream, but my throat had locked up, my entire body frozen in place like I'd been pinned down by invisible hands. The walls weren't safe. Distance didn't matter. This thing, whatever it was, had followed me. I forced myself to move, my muscles aching from how stiff I'd gone. The room spun around me as I bolted for the bathroom, slamming the door shut behind me. The lock clicked into place, but it felt meaningless. I braced my hands against the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I looked like hell, pale, sweat-drenched, eyes ringed with sleeplessness. A man unraveling at the seams. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I strained to hear anything beyond the bathroom door, any sign that whatever was in that wall was moving. Nothing. And then, just when I thought I might be losing my mind completely, I heard it. A voice. Low. Playful. You can't hide from me. I recoiled so violently, it almost knocked the towel rack off the wall. The whisper hadn't come from the other side of the door. It had come from inside the bathroom. No. No, no, no. My eyes darted around, searching, scanning, and then. There. Another hole. Not in the wall. In the goddamn mirror. A tiny, jagged crack right near the frame, like a puncture wound. And behind it, something shifted. I backed away, my heels slipping against the tile. I needed to leave. No. I grabbed my phone off the counter, wrenched the bathroom door open, and ran. I didn't stop to grab my bag. Didn't stop to check if anyone was watching me. I just kept moving, bursting into the night air like I'd surfaced from drowning. The streets were empty. Too empty. The city had never felt so silent. I had nowhere to go. Nowhere was safe. And in the back of my mind, a terrible, undeniable truth settled in. The walls weren't the problem. I wasn't trapped inside them. It was inside me. I staggered down the empty street, my breath ragged, my skin clammy with sweat. The streetlights above buzzed faintly, casting weak, flickering halos on the pavement. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone, trying to call someone, anyone, but my fingers felt numb, clumsy, like they didn't belong to me. The screen was cracked, smeared with sweat, and the signal bar flickered, unstable. I needed to think. Needed to stop moving and figure out what the hell was happening. A bus stop loomed ahead, empty except for a flickering advertisement panel covered in peeling posters. I slumped onto the bench, my legs barely holding me up. The city felt unreal, distant, like I was sitting inside a photograph rather than an actual place. The world around me was wrong. I could feel it. The night wasn't just quiet, it was watching. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to steady my breathing, but behind my eyelids, I saw it. The hole. The eye. Always there, always waiting. You let it in, a voice whispered. I jerked upright, my pulse spiking so hard my vision swam. The voice hadn't come from around me. It had come from inside me. I swallowed hard, staring down at my shaking hands. My fingers twitched involuntarily. Something moved beneath my skin. A crawling sensation, like tiny tendrils spreading outward from my spine, creeping through my veins, searching. I clamped my hands over my face, pressing my palms into my eyes until spots of color exploded in the darkness. It's inside me. It's inside me. Something shifted in the reflection of the advertisement panel. My heart stopped. I turned my head slowly, dreading what I knew I'd see. The glass was cracked. A tiny hole, right in the center. And behind it, a blink. My own reflection stared back at me, but its eyes weren't mine. They were darker, deeper, something vast and endless lurking just beneath the surface. The thing inside me smiled. And then, for the first time, it spoke aloud. I like the way you see things. I screamed. The world tilted, shattered, and everything went dark.